everyone, welcome back. Today we're going over how I like to make my potting mix. We'll talk about the main components that I use, but then we're going to get into why I make a biologically rich living potting soil and why I think that makes the best home for your potted plants. Let's get into it. The step-by-step for this portion of the video is going to be pretty quick because I've already done a video that really drills down into this whole process. You can check it out. It's my seed starting mix video. I really want to show you guys this for the compost section. So the main part of this mix is going to be my chicken yard compost or a different compost that you can get, which we're going to talk about soon. But this is a clover that grows just outside my chicken run, growing from chicken yard compost. And this is still quite a big clover, but a regular clover that grows in my lawn. So you can see the massive difference between these two plants, and that is why the compost part of this mix is really important. The first thing into the mix is chicken yard compost or another compost that you have. That's the basis, and it's the biggest component of this mix. I don't like to sort of give too many ratios here, but mine is always heavy on the compost and less of the other ingredients. So you're going to want something to help your mix drain. I like to use pumice because it's what is the most easily available to me, and I find it works really well. So pumice goes into the mix. And then you need a spongy water holding material, which I'm using peat moss here. You can use cocoa peat, anything that's going to hold and retain moisture in your mix. And then the final step, which you can skip if you want to add when you're about to use it, is nutrients. Because the chicken yard compost is already really high in your main NPK things, I don't tend to add that, which is nitrogen, potassium, phosphorus. I just have here a little bit of gypsum, a little bit of garden lime, and a little bit of seaweed. So that just rounds out what the mix is sort of lacking a little bit. I add mine in when I mix it. You could add yours at the end when you're about to use it, and you can change that up depending on the sort of plant that you're going to put into this potting mix. Then it's just a case of mixing it all up and adding the right amount of water. I do not keep my mix dry. I store it moist all the time, and I keep it moist because it's really, really alive. And that's what we're going to talk about next, why it's alive and why you want that to be the case. The reason I find it so important to have a biologically rich, a living potting mix or seed starting mix, I use the same thing for everything, is because I am trying to the best of my ability to copy what you'd find in a living, thriving ecosystem or in a really, really well-managed garden that grows great food. I like to make sure that everything in that mix, which I don't know what it is, I just know it's in there because it works so well for starting my seedlings and keeping my plants healthy. You can look at it like this. If you have an apartment building and it's already filled up with lots of great tenants who have a thriving community, then that's a happy working community. And if some less desirable tenants want to come and join that apartment building, there's no room for them. And it's the same in the soil, it's the same in your potting soil. If your plant is living in an environment where all of those spaces, those niches are already filled up with things that are helping the plant, helping the soil, and then conditions change, things get a bit tough, well, there's not room for the bad guys, so to speak, things that could upset the balance to the negative, to really come in and mess with the plant and your growing system. If you had popped your plant into a sterile mix or started your seeds in a sterile mix, then yeah, they'll go ahead and grow. There's nothing negative, there's also nothing positive. But you're not going to keep the plant in that environment forever. It's eventually going to go out into the garden. It's eventually going to face some adversity. And if the environment that plant is in just has nothing in it, the bad guys, the things that are going to cause problems, can just come on in there and wreak havoc. And if you've got all the good ones there instead, they're going to have a much tougher time coming in there and messing with the environment you've set up. I use my chicken run compost for my potting soil. Now, what do you do if you don't have chickens or your chicken run composting system isn't up and running yet? Well, you've got a few choices. The next best option is to have a worm farm and use the vermicompost that comes out to mix in with a store-bought compost or your own compost. Worm farming is great for biologically active soils. If you can't do that, you can buy vermi castings, and that is a good option. But you can use your own compost that you make yourself. But if you're new to composting, there's a steep learning curve for making really good quality compost, and you really need good quality compost for successful potting mix. So go ahead and buy the best quality compost you can find, mix it with the worm castings, or mix it with a product that you can buy that is biologically active. There's quite a lot of options for that. Normally it will have something like fish emulsion with seaweed or a seaweed-based product, and it will say something like inoculated or biological. They'll use those terms, and that means that the manufacturer has added in components of biology that you can use to your advantage in your potting mix. Those are the components for putting together an excellent biologically active potting mix. Go ahead and use whatever you can find to work for your situation. You're gonna love it, and your plants are gonna love it too.